5:30?
T minus 25 seconds.
And I'm watching the corner of the thing like, oh, good start. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. Call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sherry Budd.
Yes, here.
Garrett.
Yes.
Callie Barr is excused. Medina Atchison.
Here.
Brian Cullen.
Here.
Jeff Jar. Here. Brian Kelly.
Here. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. We have a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. A motion by Commissioner Cullen, support by Commissioner Jar. Is there any comments or discussions regarding the agenda?
Through the chair, I'll just give a reminder. There was a revised version of the agenda. It has some minor changes, including changes really on each of the items tonight. So one of the changes is on the agenda format itself. Some additional detail has been provided for case 20-008 for the fairgrounds. For the Clover development, there's a slightly revised memo from myself, the planning director. There's a new memo from the fire marshal, and just a watermark on one of the memos from the township engineer because there were two memos in there in his report. So I wanted to clarify which one was the current one by showing one was just for reference. And then the other item is that the community center addition has been postponed to a later meeting date. So that's not on the agenda.
Thank you so much. All in favor of approving the agenda with the updates that Director Power mentioned, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing as none, the motion passes. Next item is approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of April 13th, 2022. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes?
So through the chair, I make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 13th, 2022. I support.
A motion by Commissioner Budd, support by Commissioner Garrett. Any comments or discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing as none, all in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, the motion passes. Brings us to new business item number 1, case number 19-040, Clover Communities Final Site Plan Review. The applicant, Clover Communities of Van Buren LLC, is requesting final site plan approval for the construction of a proposed senior housing facility with 128 independent senior housing units. We have a presentation by Township staff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I would like to do is just have some slides available and I'll go through them quickly on the screen, but then I'll refer back to our planning consultant and our township engineer to go through their findings before I then come back and summarize the fire marshal's findings and then go through a couple of the comments in my memo. But just for some context for the case before you tonight, if you look on the screen here, I will have just a simple drawing of the simple excerpt of the site plan, the landscaping plan, architectural elevations for the project, and kind of tracking with the pace of the discussion tonight. Our township engineer will likely get into the grading, the utilities, and so that's kind of the sequence of the images you'll see on the screen. That being said, I'll go ahead and put this back to the site plan and refer this over to our planning consultant, Vidya Krishnan, to go over her report findings on the Clover project.
Thank you, Director Power. Just to briefly summarize for the benefit of the Planning Commission, since this project has been a while coming before you, the proposal was from Clover Communities to construct a senior housing complex with 128 independent living units. The site is on the west side of Belleville Road between E-Course and Tyler Roads, has a total area of about 17.72 acres, and is zoned C2, which is the Extensive Highway Business District. It is also located within the Belleville Road Overlay District. They received preliminary site plan approval from the Planning Commission in March 24th of 2021. It was also granted special land use approval by the Township Board of Trustees. I'll go over in brief the conditions that you had set forth when you gave them preliminary site plan approval. The first one was Wayne County's approval of detention pond landscaping. This condition can be met It's taken the applicant a long time to work out the details of the site, its detention, which Paul will go over in detail. It's taken them a while to work it out with Wayne County. So I don't know if at this time they have the final letter, but they were just waiting for the final letter to come through. So that can be submitted to meet this requirement. Approval of stormwater detention calculations by Township Engineer in Wayne County. Once again, it's tied to the same approval by the county. They were required to address all of the issues that were noted regarding the plan's lighting requirements. The preliminary plan required that the height of some of the light poles needed to be reduced and also fixture details need to be produced. At this time, the photometric plan shows 12-foot tall decorative light poles in two styles with different illumination intensity along the main drive aisle of Belleville Road and in the remaining areas of the site. The fixtures are also the decorative lantern-style fixtures on the accessory garage buildings. Previously, they looked very industrial in style, and they have changed it to match the architecture of the building. One of the biggest conditions that was placed on the project was the accessory units, which is the garages. They were shown as two blocks, one on the south side of the site and one on the west side of the site, and the Planning Commission required that the buildings need to be broken up into smaller segments so that they don't appear like short-term storage units and look truly like garage units. So the applicant at this time has broken up the garages on the south side and the west side of the site into 4 segments of 5 garage units each. And this looks so much better, and it looks so much in scale with a residential development rather than being a storage unit. The revised units are also constructed predominantly of brick with hardy plank siding and an asphalt shingled roof. The building material colors will match what is there for the primary building itself. While the percentage of materials is not specifically noted based upon our calculations, it does comply. The next one was submission of details for the dumpster enclosure, and the condition has been met. The dumpster enclosure was previously shown on the northwest corner of the site. That raised some concerns because in our future land use plan map, it is envisioned that someday Robson Road will be a full-through road along the north property line, which will place the dumpster squarely in the front yard of Robson Road. So at this time, the applicant has moved it to the southwest corner of the site where it is much better placed. It is not directly visible if and when future Robson Road should come through. The enclosure is to be provided with a 2-foot brick base and stained block on top of it, which will once again tie it to the rest of the structures on the site. The sign design needed to be revised to include a base, a monument base. The previous sign was just on 2 pillars on either side. We don't allow those sort of signs in Van Buren Township. The new sign shows that it'll have a solid 2-foot base constructed of masonry, and above it will be the oval sign with the name of the development, which I believe at this time is going to be the Willows of Van Buren or some similar name, whatever Clover decides with the township. And finally, relocation of a transformer pad. There was a transformer pad shown right off the main access drive into the site. It was actually, yes, where Director Power is pointing, it was located somewhere over there, and it just seemed like in such an odd place. You enter the site and the first thing you see is a transformer. So the applicant was asked to relocate it. They have moved it to an area that is closer to the front of the building. While not ideal, it's more suitable in this area with the landscape plan, with the greenery that is proposed in that area. It'll blend in better than a transformer sitting in the middle of nowhere. So at this time, all of the preliminary conditions of site plan approval have been met. So it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant final site plan approval to Clover Communities Senior Housing to be located at 8470 Belleville Road, subject to Wayne County approval of stormwater detention for the site. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have later.
Thank you so much. Mr. Cameron, I think we have a presentation for engineering, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so as Director Power mentioned, we did do an initial engineering review on the submittal from the applicant, which we produced a letter for not recommending site plan approval moving forward at that point, and that is the for reference letter that you will see in your packet dated, I believe it's March 11th. Let me get the date right here. Yes, March 11th of 2022. But that letter was sent to the applicant and they have gone through and amended their plans to meet many of the comments that we had made in that letter, which got us to the current set of plans that we're reviewing now. So I will go through my letter dated April 14th, 2022. And so the Fishbick has reviewed the site plan dated March 23rd, 2022, submitted to the township for a second engineering final site plan review for the proposed Clover site. As I said, the previous engineering plan was submitted October 18th, 2021, and was returned without recommendation for approval, as indicated in our letter on March 11th. For each individual utility or engineering aspect of the site, I'm going to go through at least the existing and proposed portions, since it has been quite some time, as Ms. Krishnan mentioned, almost a year now, to give the commission at least a update or a refresher as to what the applicant is proposing on site and what they've done to amend some of our previous comments. So for the water main service on the site, the Township GIS indicates a publicly owned 12-inch AC water main running north and south along Belleville Road. And the proposed plan is to add a proposed 8-inch water main loop around the proposed building, connecting to the existing water main on the other side of Belleville Road in 2 separate locations. This will create a redundant loop around the building for reliability and the ability to shut off portions of the water main while still maintaining service to their residents. The building or the plans indicate a fire protection lead and water service lead on the northeast side of the building, which was changed from a previous version that had the line coming off of the southeast side of the proposed loop. The plans indicate 5 proposed fire hydrants around the building, and as I said, this will be a fire protected building. The comments that we had on the plans, the original set of plans initially had the water main running along the driveway, essentially underneath the proposed set of trees that was the landscaping along the driveway, which we asked the applicant to move, which they have shifted now the water main further off of the road, so it's easier for maintenance for the township water and sewer department and allows for the vegetation and the landscape to grow properly without having it impacted with any maintenance for the water main. We initially, almost a year ago, had asked the applicant to add a new isolation valve in the Belleville Road water main, which after further investigation, we found out was going to be a redundant valve. So we've asked the applicant to remove that from the plans because there is already a isolation valve there that does not need to be replaced. And the only main comment or major issue that we had with the current set of plans after the many iterations of our review was there's a hydrant that is located too close to the building. Engineering standards call for the hydrant to be minimum of 40 feet away from the building, just so that access can be made by the fire department. And I'm sure the applicant will have no issue adjusting that location of that hydrant. The applicant still needs to submit for an Eagle drinking water permit, which can come at this time, and actually had email correspondence with the applicant today about getting those plans set and ready to submit to Eagle for their permit. The sanitary sewer service, again, just like the water main, there is an 8-inch public sanitary line that runs north and south along Belleville Road and connects into the main 10-inch sanitary line down by Tyler Road. The flow goes south towards the Belleville or Tyler Road district. The applicant is proposing to install 2 private sanitary leads flowing from 2 separate areas of the building that will eventually connect into an 8-inch sanitary service or sanitary sewer that flows east to that main that runs along Belleville Road. The applicant is proposing the 8-inch sewer to run underneath Belleville Road and then connect into the main via a open cut process where they'll cut across Belleville Road and tie into the main. This is something that will and is being approved by Wayne County and will be inspected by the county and by the township engineers and inspection crew. The only comments that we had on the installation of the sanitary sewer was near the location where they're tapping into it. On the east side of Belleville Road, there are some residential driveways and some ditches on the east side of the road that we want to make sure that they at least note that the driveways and or culverts for the ditches are taken care of and shown as being replaced and not just a suggestion if they get destroyed, but actually just replace them in kind. The sanitary sewer plans also, because it is a public main, need to go through the Eagle permitting process. And again, in talking with the applicant, this is in the process and should be submitted sometime in the next week or two. So then the big one, I'd say the stormwater management. This has been kind of the crux of this project since the beginning, and as Ms. Christian said, it has gone through multiple iterations as to what the applicant has proposed, and then what the county wanted the applicant to do, and then dealing with what is actually on site and what is feasible for the applicant to do with their stormwater. With that, I'm just going to read what I have here so I don't get confused. It'll make it easier, so bear with me. So currently, there is no existing storm sewers that run along Belleville Road adjacent to the proposed development. Stormwater runoff from Belleville Road is conveyed via open ditches and doesn't really go anywhere, or as far as we can tell, it's a very flat and open system. There's no enclosed Wayne County system along Belleville Road. So in the process of the applicant going through their design, they've come up with a solution that both the county and the township are accepting via some of the comments that we'll get to here. So the proposed system is, or the proposed system that the applicant has on their plans and is proposing, is to collect stormwater using a privately owned storm sewer system conveyed via to an on-site drainage basin or detention basin. According to the applicant's stormwater narrative, the stormwater pond with the forebay will be sized to accommodate the stormwater for the subject site and future development of the out parcel. The plans indicate a standard detention pond system with a proposed outlet and an emergency overflow spillway into a plunge pool at the edge of the property. Now, in talking with the applicant, the plunge pool, which you see on the far left side of the screen, is essentially another detention pond, if you will, or somewhere where sediment can still collect. And this was something that Wayne County, according to the applicant, had an issue with, essentially adding another detention pond into the system. So the plunge pool on the west side there will just be turned into now what they call a level spreader. Essentially, when the drainage pond discharges into this area, rather than just discharging into a ditch or creating a ditch out of a culvert, it will be dispersed over a long 30-foot segment where it will then overflow and kind of have a sheet flow pattern rather than a single point of exit, which will create some erosion and really just create a ditch that goes to the property to the west. The discharge westerly onto the adjacent property goes towards the Apple Run drain, which is about 1,500 feet to the west. There is no direct connection to the Apple Run drain from this plunge pool or level spreader, but instead it's just what they call an overland sheet flow that goes east to west towards the Apple Run drain. The underlying issue over the last year that the applicant's been dealing with is that the county would like to see a direct connection or a approval by the adjacent property owner, who the adjacent property owner is the township, to give them a drainage easement or a letter of acknowledgement that gives approval for this property to flow to the west. The township has been in conversations with the applicant over what the requirements are, and I believe Director Power can get into those a little bit more, and the applicant has agreed and worked through that with the township to come to an agreement that is will work for both parties. So there are some of in the updated section of here kind of runs down a few of the items that the township has requested, like I said, that Director Power can go over. But as an overall drainage system for the site, we don't have any issue with the way that it is proposed. It is a standard drainage system that would be approved on any other site. The biggest issue with this property in general is that there is just no direct outlet into a county storm system without crossing the property to the west. And that's where this agreement comes in. Now, to give even further background, the applicant did look into doing a retention basin, which is essentially a basin that's about double size that would just retain all the water. But because of the soils and because of the high groundwater table, it wasn't a feasible option for that either. As Ms. Krishnan mentioned, from what I understand, the county has approved this design, and we're just awaiting a letter from the county at this point for official approval. Other than that, I don't have any other major questions. As I mentioned, or major comments. As I mentioned, we've been through this back and forth, I don't know, half a dozen times already. So we are recommending that the Planning Commission grant Clover Senior Housing engineering and final site plan approval, subject to the comments listed in our letter dated April 14th, 2022, and of course pending the county review and approval, since we haven't seen the letter. And as we tell all applicants, if the county does come back with major changes or things that would change the site plan, then obviously they would have to reapply for site plan approval. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or give any more detailed response if any of the commissioners have any. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kammer. Brings us up to a presentation by the applicant.
Through the chair, if you'd like, I can say a few comments after the applicant speaks. That'd be fine. I can go over the fire marshal's comments and mine at that point.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, everybody, for having us. Paul and Vidya did a great job reintroducing the project. I know it's been a while to take through the project here to get through Wayne County, where we've had some substantial holdups and delays in communication, but we finally got to a point where we've been able to work through that and feel that all of the issues at hand have been satisfactorily resolved. Regarding the fire hydrant location, we have an email just from an hour or so ago with the fire marshal approving the location where it's at right now. So we're not going to locate that further from the building. so that it has the proximity necessary for the fire department connection. But with that, we're happy to address all of the outstanding comments that they have for conditional approval on the plan. We'll have that revised within the next week or two here and be underway with our utility permits with the state. So if you have any questions or comments, we're happy to answer.
Thank you so much. Director Power, she indicated we have also a fire department recommendation as well. And I think you had some additional comments regarding the application.
Yes, I can go over those now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The important thing to note is that you have a very new report from the fire marshal. There was still some back and forth last week regarding the turning radius of the largest fire ladder truck that would be potentially going to have to access this site. And based on the initial fire access plan that was provided in the application, there were still some concerns from the fire marshal in regard to the turning templates and the basis for the turning templates that were used. But as you can see in the report dated April 25th, the fire marshal talked to Mr. Keim on April 21st in regard to the maneuverability of the ladder truck around the complex. He asked for and was provided with additional information on the dimensions of that truck, and Mr. Keim's subsequent email stated that with the updated dimensions, the turning radiuses for the ladder truck have improved and are compliant. So all fire department concerns in regards to access and water supply have been addressed at this time, and the site plans as submitted are approved. Of course, the fire department will still be looking at the building plans and have already, the building plan review is underway. So there's a separate parameter for review from the fire department on the building aspect that's still pending. I did want to go over some additional planning related comments, and if I can get my scrolling to work, I'll show a couple of exhibits that help to clarify these points. But the first thing I wanted to talk about in stepping back and looking at the big planning picture for this site is something we've talked about as part of preliminary site plan review, which is the potential future extension of Robson Road. That's in our master plan designated as an essential connection in our mobility plan. Having that road connect through would be a logical halfway point between Tyler Road and Ecorse Road, and it would really daylight and make available a lot of space and maneuverability for potential development on the west side of Belleville Road. So it is vital that we plan for that and make sure that sites that develop in this area develop in a way that's responsive to that. So based on that line of thinking, we had the applicant shift the location of the primary driveway for their site to the south so that there wouldn't be a close proximity between this driveway and a potential future Robson Road connection. And the out parcel that you see here is designed such that it could tie directly into a future Robson Road connection. The items that I still wanted to go over related to that have mostly been addressed. What the applicant has provided us is a set of exhibits that show what a future potential 60-foot right-of-way local road connection would look like adjacent to this site and adjacent to the out parcel. Based on the design constraints on this site, it would make logical sense for a future right-of-way to be adjacent to, but not necessarily encroaching over the Clover site, especially because we don't know if or when that connection will happen. So what's being considered right now is that there's a conceptual extension of Robson Road that crosses right at the kind of straddles the northern border of the out parcel here, but then swings a little bit to the north so that it lines the northern boundary line of this parcel. What I'm asking for at this point is just simply that prior to the development of the out parcel, there's a firm either right-of-way easement in place, or if it's a private road, a private access easement in place to support that development and to support the future road. And that in the case of Clover, if and when that road goes through, that they will commit to extending their driveway to that road. And if a traffic study supports restrictions on their main driveway here, because of the proximity to that road, that they would be amenable to potentially restricting access in terms of perhaps it's a matter of having no left turns out from this driveway that you see here tonight. That's something that, of course, a traffic study would be used to justify yes or no at a later date. So really, I'm just looking for a commitment that certain improvements will be made in the future if Robson Road is connected, and that this site and other sites coordinate moving forward, including the township, to determine the best alignment for that road in the future. And that prior to the development of the out parcel, that alignment is solidified, at least to the west lot line of that out parcel. The other comments I have in my report relate to a item regarding the lease restrictions for the development, just to verify the senior housing aspect of the site and to have a copy of what the lease restrictions are for the tenants moving forward. It's going to be important for us to keep records of that. As part of that, the applicant will be finalizing a name for the project, and will get final approval on the naming of the project as well. The other thing that I would like to just speak to, which is not a condition in my letter, but just something that the township engineer had brought up, is the kind of unique situation with regard to stormwater that we're in. And this being a site that's in a relatively low spot that is not immediately adjacent to a county drain, has some unique constraints. So as the township engineer said, we looked at this closely in coordination with the county, and between our water and sewer director, myself, the township engineer, and township leadership, we looked at that and determined the best course forward was to allow this is the most logical way for the stormwater to be managed on this site. So what we wanted to do is just make sure that we have the best data moving forward for accommodating the natural drainage course of stormwater in the future for whatever additional outflow of stormwater goes over the property to the west, which the township does own. The applicant has provided topographic contour data, survey information, and wetland GIS delineation to show what the drainage patterns on the adjacent property are, so that we can plan for the future. So we'll finalize the terms of that agreement as part of the final engineering review, but there's really nothing else that's required at this time for your consideration of the final site plan on stormwater. Those were all of the planning comments and additional comments that I had. So with that, I'm glad to turn this back over to questions for us staff or to the applicant.
Thank you. Do you have any questions from any of the commissioners?
Through the chair, what I'd like to know is who owns that out parcel? Is it Clover? Yes. Okay, and the second question coming through on that, then if that out parcel is developed by somebody else, I would assume you're going to allow them to use your drive to access that parcel if Robson Road is not put through?
Sorry, could you please come up to the mic? Otherwise, it won't get recorded and we can't hear it at home.
Yeah, and actually, if you could just try to make it so you can really hear your volume over the loudspeaker. That's the only way it gets on the YouTube, I know.
Hey, I don't like to hear my own volume, but I'll try.
Thank you.
So the answer is yes, we're the owner. There is some consideration on making a donation of that parcel. But as far as access, it's hard to see probably on the reduced scale plans that you have, but we do have shown a future access drive.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, Commissioner Jar.
Director Power, could you refresh my memory? Is there a sidewalk along the entire frontage of Belleville Road? What's the narrative there?
There is in the final plan a sidewalk across the frontage.
Yes.
To be constructed at all at once.
Save for the out parcel, yes.
Okay, so the out parcel sidewalk is deferred, but south of the access drive, it'll be a sidewalk all the way down Belleville Road?
That's correct.
Thanks for the reminder.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners?
This isn't a question, I guess it's more of just a statement. Dan Power mentioned the name, and we know it's been changed to the Willows. And the clerk and the supervisor looked at it, we talked about it today, and I guess our request would be, we'd like to see if you would just add the Willows of Van Buren Township, and we're very pleased with what you've chosen.
We are willing to consider that. I can't commit without running a name search through the state, but as soon as we do, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else from any other commissioner? Yes.
Through the chair. I have a question, and this is probably because I wasn't here earlier on, but curious about for the building, the facade, and does that match the surrounding areas? Does it complement the other buildings that are in that intersection?
So right now, the property is very undeveloped, and the parcels around it are also very undeveloped. So a considerable amount of time was spent during initial development to craft the building to meet the goals of the master plan and the goals of the overlay district. So the colors and essentially the design of the building was crafted for what is envisioned in that corridor in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner George?
I did want to acknowledge that I like the smaller garage buildings. I know from our last meeting, which does seem like a long time ago, that was a point of discussion, but I really do appreciate the work you put into making those look the way they look now. In fact, I'd say the overall appearance of the project, I really appreciate the amount of work you've done to bring it up to the Belleville Road Overlay District standard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, could the applicant confirm, I may have misstated the sidewalk. Could you confirm what the sidewalk coverage is for the site?
You are correct. The sidewalk will cover the entire frontage, excluding the out parcel, which is being deferred.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Through the chair, I'm looking for a clarification regarding the fire marshal's letter. Did he indicate approval of the fire hydrant? That engineering wanted it further away?
That was still a condition, I believe.
Mr.
But
Keim,
I had some correspondence with the fire marshal just this evening prior to the meeting here, and he responded that since there's no viable location to move it to that still meets the separation criteria from the fire department connection, it requires it to be within 50 feet of the building, but the engineering standards require it to be 40 feet away based on the drive location and the height of the building. He's willing to accept it at 33 feet from the building where it is right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Yes, Director Bauer.
I do hate to belabor a point, but I was just in reviewing the plans tonight, looking closely at them. I have them in a small scale, and this is a detail I want to make sure we get right tonight. I'm looking kind of at our planning consultant and the applicant. Regarding the sidewalk, could we verify that I do have a plan that I'll put the site plan back up on the screen because it does look like there's a...
refresh from 1 year ago. It's a little difficult.
Well, and I do see a 5-foot dimension across the out parcel as well. So I think to the extent that we can clarify that tonight, I think it would be good to do so.
So we are looking at the plans that were submitted by you for Wayne County. It's going across all the way from Robson Corner along your entire frontage. It'll be across the entire frontage, outlot included. I think the one thing we deferred was the greenbelt landscaping because we didn't want you to rip out all the existing trees and put in tiny little trees. That's what we deferred. You are still putting the sidewalk along the entire frontage on Belleville Road.
To the microphone. Thank you.
Originally, with the preliminary plan where the out parcel was the larger area on the south side of the drive, and it encompassed the vast majority of the frontage there. We were deferring that section there when the out parcel occupied this space here. Since it's been moved north and it's a much smaller piece, now I believe we do have it reflected, shown, and to be constructed at this time. But again, we would limit the removal to just the sidewalk area, not doing street trees and all of that.
So to be clear, the proposed sidewalk shown on sheet 3 of this plan that was in the packet, this is the proposed sidewalk. Sheet 3, this sidewalk will be constructed before anyone moves into the building.
For the full length of the property.
If it's shown, it will be built.
The applicant indicated that if it is shown, it will be built. Thank you.
Once the planning commission acts to grant final approval, it has to be built.
Yes, yes, and that's why that's why I'm asking. If we do grant final, it's in stone.
It's been a while, so it's like Dan is looking at me and I'm frantically thinking, what did we look at in March? Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for letting us clarify that tonight. It was an important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're up to public comment. Is there anybody that's logged in on Zoom this evening? Director Power?
I will check. Thank you. Sadly, there are no remote participants tonight, so there are no public comments on the Zoom.
And anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? No? All right. So brings us up to action. Are we ready to take action on item 1 for the agenda this evening?
Chair.
Commissioner Jar.
The matter of case 19-040, Clover Communities final site plan review, I move to grant the applicant, Clover Communities of Van Buren LLC, final site plan approval to construct a senior housing facility with 128 independent senior housing units at the site located at 8470 Belleville Road, based on the analysis, subject to the conditions detailed in the following letters. McKenna, dated April 14th, 2022. Fishbeck, dated April 14th, 2022. Van Buren Fire Report, dated April 25th, 2022. And the letter of staff, dated April 26th, 2022, revised.
Do I have support for the motion?
I'll support.
Yeah, motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Cullen. Do you have any comments or discussions regarding the motion? Seems there are none. Can we please have a roll call on this?
Medina Atchison,
Yes.
Kamika Garrett,
Yes.
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Brian Cullen,
Yes.
Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Kelly.
Yes. And you have gotten final site plan approval. The motion passes. Thank you so much for coming in this evening. Oh, yes.
I would just like to thank everyone. I appreciate your time and your patience. It has been an adventure with Wayne County. And I want to compliment your building. I haven't been here in a couple months, and wow, welcome to 2022. So congrats on that. And lastly, I've told you before, but I continue to get calls about this project. It has not been recently circulated in any papers. So I think this is going to be very successful here, and we look forward to being here.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing the project go forward. Hope you have a great night. Item number 2 on our agenda, we have case number 20-008, Wayne County Fairgrounds Restroom Building. The applicant, Wayne County 4-H Association, seeks to construct a 1,392 square foot restroom and laundry building on a 2,380 square foot slab at an existing fairground facility, along with 7 new asphalt parking lots or parking spaces and concrete walkway, and to demolish 7,500 square feet of combined concrete and gravel surfaces. We have a presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to go through this case tonight. Before you tonight, you have Ms. Deborah Schulte from Wayne County Fair, and the owner of the, representing the owner of the site, which is the Wayne County 4-H Association. As the chair mentioned, the request is to gain site plan approval to construct a 1,392 square foot restroom and laundry building at the site and some related site improvements. Now, with most non-residential uses in the township, the construction or addition of a building greater than 1,000 square feet requires site plan review. I will say in this case, what you're looking at is a very unique site with a long history in the township, and the use is a mix of uses, some of which don't fit neatly into the current zoning categories that we ascribe. It's a 37.5 acre fairground site in a lot that's zoned for R1B single-family residential use. I'm going to describe a little bit of the history of the site to give you some context for why and how it's being reviewed the way it's being reviewed. According to the applicant, the fairgrounds was established in 1946, and there was historically camping at the site, at first just to serve the fair activities once a year, and that grew and evolved into a full campground by the early 1980s. Which predates our current zoning ordinance by about 35 years or so. So there has been a long history of camping and fairground activities and events, carnivals, races at this site. So there's a unique land use history here for uses that would otherwise be considered campground, which is something that is permitted in our commercial zoning districts, and private park or an outdoor recreation area, which are special land uses in other districts. So when the fairgrounds started to recognize the need to improve their restroom facilities available to the campers, they started that effort in 2019. And at that time, the planning director who predated me, Director Akers, had helped to set in motion a process for kind of a tailored site plan review to meet the needs of what's being requested here. So the recommendation to the applicant at that time was that the township would review this in a specific scale around the area of the restroom itself and not impose an entire site-wide special land use and site plan review. So that's the framework in which I provide some comments, and I've had our township engineer and fire marshal assist with some of the review as this has gone forward. So it is a limited review with some engineering components that deal with water pressure, site drainage, and then some planning and zoning aspects that deal with access and parking around the building. So I'll go through my findings based on those parameters of this review. So first I'll go over some of the use and basic zoning requirements. With this being in the R1B zoning district, there is a 30-foot required front yard, 25-foot required combined side yard, and 35-foot required rear yard setback, and all of those setbacks have been met. This is a survey drawing from a few years ago that kind of represents the entirety of the site, with the star showing where the new restroom facility is to be located. Left is north on this screen, so you're looking at McBride Avenue to the north there, and Quirk Road to the west. And this is about 200 feet from McBride Avenue and over 700 feet from Quirk Road. So the setbacks certainly meet the requirements. The one aspect that comes up in zoning is the building architecture. I may have to scroll back through some images after I speak, so if you can bear with me, I'll try to go through my comments and then just scroll through those images. There has been a elevation drawing provided with building permit submittal for the restroom facility. It shows that there will be concrete block walls and a hip roof with asphalt shingles. It's a nice pitched roof. So the building architecture complies and conforms with the vicinity of the site. I just ask that a color rendering is provided to show the color palette of the building prior to construction. There will be 7 proposed off-street parking spaces on an asphalt surface adjacent to this building. My only condition with that is that there are dimensions shown to show these are 20 feet deep, 9.5 feet wide, and have an adjacent maneuvering lane that's 24 feet wide. Scaling it out on the drawing that's been provided, it looks like it meets those requirements, but I just like those dimensions shown. And the spaces must be double striped. That's a township standard. With regard to access, there's an existing network of drive surfaces on this site, some of which are gravel, some of which are hard surfaced. As I said, the area surrounding this building will be asphalt. So prior to final inspection, I just request that the applicant walk with township staff to ensure that there is adequate access to the building, that the drives are not in disrepair before they occupy this building. To step back, I didn't mention that part of this expansion involves the basically moving some of these, it's basically washers, dryers, showers, and fixtures for plumbing, sinks, toilets, urinals. There's already these features in an existing building to the north of where the building is being proposed. Those features will be moved out of that existing building, and there will be more of them in this new building. So you're looking at 6 washers and 6 dryers. There's a list of all the fixtures and all the other improvements that are included with this report from Ms. Zellner of Wayne County Fairgrounds, and I'm sure Ms. Schulte can also speak to those. You can see that there's 8 bathrooms with the 7 sinks, 2 urinals, toilets. So just to explain some of the details of what's proposed. So that kind of relates to this next set of comments, which pertains to water and sewer utilities. We wanted to take a look at that as well to make sure there was adequate flow for the site, both for the purposes of what they want to bring in for restroom usage, but also in the event of a fire, that there's safe access and good water pressure for a fire. So there was a flow test provided early in this process in 2020. Based on that flow test, the fire department wanted to, and the water and sewer director at that time wanted to make sure that there was adequate provisions for fire suppression and fire management in the event of a fire. The flow wasn't quite enough to do that, so what they have done to respond to those concerns was that the fairgrounds actually constructed a new driveway directly onto McBride Avenue so that the hydrant on McBride can be directly accessed within the required range of a hydrant for the site. So that was a big effort on behalf of the fairgrounds, and that provides the adequate route for fire management for the fire department. So the water concerns have been addressed. The site will also tie into the township sanitary sewer system, and associated water and sewer tap fees are being evaluated right now, although they're going to be proportional to just the increase that's occurring here. They're not going to be brand new water and sewer tap fees. There's also stormwater drainage that we have to consider, and I'll continue to coordinate with the township engineer as necessary to look at this part of it, but generally there will be downspouts on the building that discharge roof drainage into basically existing either surface drainage toward catch basins that have been installed or existing stormwater facilities on the site. So with that said, I do recommend preliminary and final site plan approval, subject to some conditions, including that there will be a color rendering of the building, that the off-street parking spaces are double striped and meet the dimensional standards, as well as the access aisle meeting the dimensional standards, that there will be a final walkthrough prior to final inspection showing that the access to and from the building is in good repair, and that the downspouts are installed on the proposed building and adequately discharge roof drainage to the surrounding area. With that said, I'd encourage you to ask Ms. Schulte for any additional information on the project.
Thank you so much, Director Power. I believe we have Fire marshal letter as well, correct, regarding this item?
We do, thank you. The fire marshal had just said in his letter, March 18th, 2022, that all previous water supply and fire department access concerns have been corrected. So his letter recommends approval.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. As you know, we're asking for approval to put in a new restroom facility. They will be single units, family-friendly. Each will contain a shower, sink, and a toilet. Right now, our building that we have has 7 showers, I believe 7 sinks or 8 sinks, and 2 urinals. It's in quite in need of upgrade or uplift, but the amount to do that would be unforgiving, I guess, to our wallets. So we have talked to Mr. Power about the fact that once we get the approval to do the new bathroom and it gets erected, that the old facility we would like to demolish. So that is what that 7,500 square foot of gravel space will consist of. The old building coming down, all that will be turned into green space. That we have the parking there right now, and some old cement slab that's been there for ages. So that'll all be green space between our main road that goes to the back side of our campground and over to the new facility. Anything else that anybody wants to know?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions from any of the commissioners? Or no?
That's easy.
Any questions from public? And Director Power, do we have?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you have anybody on Zoom yet, or I'm guessing it may be the same it was on the last item, but I wanted to check.
So nobody from Zoom, nothing.
Thank you so much, Director Power. All right, are we ready to consider taking action on this agenda item?
Yes.
Commissioner,
Chair,
Commissioner Atchison?
I would like to grant the applicant, Wayne County Fairgrounds, preliminary approval and final site plan approval, subject to the analysis and the conditions noted in the letter from staff dated April 22nd, 2022, and the Van Buren Township letter from the fire department from Andrew Lanahan dated March 18th, 2022. I'm sorry, but I would like to reference the location, and I just have Wayne County Fairgrounds Restroom Building. I'm sorry, it's 10871 Cork Road, parcel number 8306499000100.
Thank you. Do we have support for the motion?
I support.
I have a motion by Commissioner Atchison, support by Commissioner Garrett. Do you have any questions or comments regarding the pending motion?
Through the chair. It's not really a question on the motion, but I just would make a comment for a family that's been involved in this for a lot more years than I can count. And having been in that restroom, this is going to be a blessing to the kids, to the parents that have hauled the kids around all these years. And I just wish them all the luck getting this up and going.
Thank you, Commissioner Budd. All right, we have a roll call on this, please.
Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Cullen,
Yes.
Medina Atkinson,
Yes.
Kamika Garrett,
Yes.
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Brian Kelly.
Yes. And the motion passes. You are granted preliminary and final site plan approval. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for hearing our case and giving us approval. We've been waiting a long time for this, as Mr. Powers knows. Thank you.
Have a great evening. All right, item number 3 on the agenda, discussion of Sumter Road Corridor public planning or public hearing. You're going to be looking at considering a date of May 25th, 2022 to hold a public hearing regarding the Sumter Road Corridor Plan. I believe Director Power, you have question for us?
Just a brief presentation. So as the planning commission remembers, there was a very productive work session at the last meeting regarding the proposed zoning ordinance text amendments for the Sumter Road corridor. I'd like to just come back to the foundation for those zoning ordinance amendments being the overall Sumter Road corridor draft plan. The draft plan is going to be what has the overall vision for the Sumter Road corridor, as well as the objectives of the plan and the future land use recommendations, including areas within that mixed use future land use that can be applied to the zoning. What I've observed is that there was a lot of buy-in to the overall vision of that plan. And at this point, there's very little in the way of, well, I shouldn't say there's very little. There's some feedback, but it does not affect the overall picture of the plan. So while we continue to work through the text amendments of the zoning ordinance, I'd still recommend you consider setting a date to go over the plan in its entirety, because that is a separate effort. Just because the comments that we've received so far are pretty minor, and I think they stick to the spirit of the plan, and the public hearing is for the purpose of getting additional feedback. So I think there's no problem with continuing that process. Just to give an idea of some of the comments that are being tracked since that draft plan was distributed to our neighboring communities. Things like font consistency throughout the text of the document, consistency with what we're calling the lots that directly abut Sumter Road that aren't those anchor lots, where we call them in some places primary lots. They should be called frontage lots. Adjustments to some images in the plan, updated renderings in the header location for some of those sections in the plan. The provision of a workshop as being a special land use in the deep frontage lots. Some graphic edits to the maps, including dashed lines for the potential future road extensions in the mobility plan. Removing the rural settlement as a lot type in the regulating plan map. And then relabeling what we call landlocked lots as secondary or rear lots because of some of the discussion we've had in the zoning ordinance work session, that those landlocked lots won't always be landlocked, but they will always have those recommendations that distinguish them from the other lots. So a different name might be more suitable, like secondary or rear. So these are all fairly minor recommendations, and the thought is that they don't substantially alter the plan or make us have to go back to the drawing board and restart kind of. So I do think if the Planning Commission's comfortable with keeping the overall plan in motion, we of course still have plenty of work to do on the zoning ordinance amendments that come after the plan, but if the Planning Commission's comfortable, I'd say you can set a date for a hearing on that plan as soon as May 25th. And if you want to do that, we'll get the noticing started for that. If you don't want to do that, you want to wait till we go through another work session for whatever reason on the text amendments, you can do that as well. I'd just like your input on what you'd like me to do next as far as scheduling.
All right, thank you, Director Power. Does anybody in the commission have feeling one way or the other on May 25th?
Do we have a preliminary meeting agenda for the 25th? Are there any other public hearings that day?
There is not, to my awareness, there may be one public hearing item on a development project, an amendment to an existing PRD project. So there could be one public hearing that day. If we want to designate a specific time for this one, we could reschedule one of those two.
Okay.
I don't have a strong opinion. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have an overloaded meeting if we were to schedule this for the...
We have 4 or 5 agenda items that are a lot of discussions on it, then we could be here quite late.
And we want to be here to get the feedback. You know, I don't want to cut the meeting short because we have a large agenda on a public hearing day. It's my only concern. I do agree with you, Albert, Director Power, that I feel like we should go ahead and get it on the schedule, whether it's the 25th or another week out, another meeting schedule out. I leave to the wisdom of of my peers, but I think it is time to have the public hearing on this, not on the text amendment section, only on the draft Sumter Road corridor plan.
Through the chair.
Get it out there.
I agree too.
Same.
All right, so I guess overall consensus, we'll have the 25th with the request that we provide enough time for feedback, public comment, and discussion on that evening. So I'm going to make sure we don't schedule it too heavy so we can spend enough time on this item.
Thank you. Good feedback.
All right, thank
All right,
you
I
so much.
think that's good enough for that item. I don't think we need a motion. I think I got the direction there, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Power. All right, item number 4, discussion regarding gasoline filling and gasoline service station zoning ordinance text amendment. Proposed amendments to Article 3, zoning districts and permitted uses regarding the categorization of gasoline filling and service stations. I think that's back to you again, Director Power.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Planning Commission. So we first visited this topic at our regular meeting on February 9th. The idea that we are somewhat unique in the context of other nearby communities and gas stations being a permitted use by right in several of our zoning districts. So because of the impacts of potential traffic and visual impacts and noise, we thought it was wise to ask the Planning Commission if at least they were amenable to us considering requiring gasoline filling stations and gasoline service stations being special land uses that require Board of Trustees approval. So based on your feedback, we started developing a draft ordinance amendment for that. Really our planner, Vidya Krishnan, did the work on that, and we've looked at those recommendations together, but she has developed them really full throttle. I will say, in addition to the special land use aspect and making dimensional rules regarding the special land use for the gasoline station use, the Planning Commission also asked us to look at electric vehicle charging stations, and we started to build that into these recommendations as well. So with that being said, I guess I'd turn this over to Vidya if you could go over your draft recommendations with the Planning Commission. This would just be the first work session of potentially several, or at least the work session before we get into a public hearing on this topic.
Thank you, Director Power. As Dan mentioned, when we did a research initially, we noticed that literally every communities, we looked at least 10 different communities across Metro Detroit, all of them have gasoline stations listed as a special land use. We were the only one where it was permitted by right. The only other exception was the city of Novi, and the only areas where they permitted it by right was right next to I-275. So they were very controlled in where they were allowing it by right. And the reason why most municipalities put this as a special land use is not because they want to discourage it, but because they know that gas stations generally have lots of impacts. The smell of gasoline, you can't avoid it. Most of them are open all around. The traffic that it creates, the circulation, the truck coming to refuel the underground tanks, and most of them have a convenience store attached with it. It's just a lot of impacts on the neighboring properties, and that's why we think it is more suited as a special land use. So after we brought it before you in February, we got the feedback that you would like to see it as a special land use. However, just moving a use to a special land use with no design standards doesn't make any sense. So the changes we are proposing at this time is in the C1, C2, the FS, which is Freeway Service District, all 3 districts, we will move gasoline stations from principal permitted use to a special permitted use. We create a new section 5.144. This section comes under Article 5, which basically has specific standards for various uses, be it gas station, outdoor storage, outdoor display, senior housing. Last one we did was senior housing, which was 5.143, so 5.144 will be gasoline stations. And finally, we are including EV charging stations too. What you have before you is a draft of the requirements that we think should be special land use requirements in terms of what the setbacks will be. And these dimensions have come up by looking at multiple communities and seeing how they regulate it. You don't want a gas station canopy too close to the front where it can affect line of sight, or circulation around the corner where it's difficult to turn. So regulating those setbacks and placing limitations on where these entrance and exit drives to these gas stations can come off from. How far away do the driveways have to be? Because quite often when you're coming out of, Ford Road is a textbook example in Canton with all those gas stations. Anytime you're coming out, you're like, do I not? You don't want to play chicken with anybody while you're trying to come out in rush hour traffic. So having the driveway separation is a good idea. Also, the way the pumps are arranged, how does the canopy look? Thankfully, the last big gas station project we got was the Speedway, and that canopy is a good-looking canopy. But if you see most companies, they will just build those steel posts with like a flat steel roof, and that's it. We want to have some architectural guidelines so that we don't have to discuss or, sort of nudge them to give better architecture. If you have standards, it takes the guesswork out. If somebody wants to build a gas station, you have to build it looking like this. And signs. The reason why EV stations is merely mentioned as a statement that it will not be regulated separately, I looked long and hard at so many communities. Electric vehicles, while they are very popular, it is still, that whole charging station thing is still an evolving field. The only place where I found EV station, charging stations itself are places like Amazon, where, Amazon has got its warehouse, they have all the electric vehicles, so they have these huge charging stations where like 40 vehicles will line up at one time. But most other places, EV stations are, a gas station will have 2 spots in front designated as EV. So while basically it's a business move, somebody plugs in their vehicle for charging, while they are waiting, they will go in and buy something from the convenience store, which is priced more. So it's a good marketing technique. If you go to some municipalities, have it in their public parks where people go to watch their kids' soccer game. They have a few designated spaces for EV parking. You plug your vehicle in. By the time you watch the soccer game and come back, your vehicle is charged. So overall, these EV stations don't require too much of design. They don't generate any noise, odor, or anything. They do require a post from which the cable comes out that you have to hook up to your vehicle. We might expand on that a little bit to, just all it does is you want to make sure that that pillar does not obstruct your sidewalk. If your sidewalk is only 5 feet wide and your pillar is placed in the middle, you can't let a wheelchair get through it. So we want to make sure that when we review a plan and if it has EV charging stations, we make sure there is enough room for people to move around it. If there are any suggestions, or if you have come across somewhere where you have seen an EV station and you've wondered, this doesn't seem to be the best placed area, please do let us know, because sometimes the regulations are not out there. Only when they go in and you realize, oh, that should have been thought of. Maybe we can build that in and fix it where somewhere else it's not being done. So this is a draft ordinance before you. I would request you to please go through it, and if anything looks like it's too much or it's too little, or you think some other regulations need to be there based upon concerns you have noticed, sometimes the users, the customers who go to a gas station will notice, oh, I wish this were done differently. So if you do, please let us know, because adding practical experience into the way you write the zoning text is invaluable. So at this time, Director Power, are we just looking for feedback for the Planning Commission to take this back, take a look, and just email Director Power your suggestions, corrections, and we will fix it and bring it back before you?
Okay.
Yep, thank you, Ed. Yep. So that would be my recommendation is you got this relatively recently, so feel free to take your time to look at it in full.
Yeah.
But any questions you have tonight, feel free to ask us.
Thank you, Director Power. Thank you, Ms. Christian. Yes,
Well,
question.
I'm going to ask a question on that.
Yeah.
2 things as far as the electric vehicle charging is concerned. Do we know if there's going to be any handicap restrictions? In other words, if you start to put those charging stations in, are they going to have to be in a handicap spot as well to provide access for those that are handicapped? And the second thing is do we want them to be located so far away from the entrance to the convenience store? Because you would be restricting a car may pull in and be there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, occupying that parking space. Is that a concern that we might have for somebody that wants to run in and run out? It's raining, it's snowing, the weather is not conducive. While somebody's sitting in their car doing nothing and you've got those spaces occupied.
Kind of like moving them over where the air pressure and the air pump is out of the way.
Yeah.
And
You don't want them to just block the convenience store entrance while they're just sitting there and not really buying anything, but their vehicle is charging. So that's a good point. Okay.
any other comments or questions?
Sure. I have a couple of questions. So as we're going through looking at this amendment, will it require existing gas stations to bring their aesthetic or their current look up to code?
No, zoning never applies retroactively. So in the future, if somebody builds or if sometimes what happens is BP gas station might sell to Mobile and Mobile will decide we are going to put our own brand this, and then they will have to, if they make enough changes that it necessitates site plan review, we can get them to come. But we cannot retroactively go and apply zoning.
That's a really good question because we do have a open review project that is kind of on a long review timeline for some extenuating circumstances, but there's a mobile gas station on Haggerty Road in the North Service Drive, for example, that actually did get a special land use from the Board of Trustees, but only because it has a drive-through component. Now, the Planning Commission has already imposed its conditions on the zoning aspects of that gas station and all those items, but as long as that project is still active, which it is as of now, it would not be subject to these standards before it gets final approval.
Thankfully, it did go through special land use for the drive-through, and the architecture is a good one.
Mr. Atchison, you had,
She just wanted you to know she was.
oh, thanks. Yes, Commissioner Jar.
I did read all of the proposed section 5144, gasoline or automobile filling stations, proposed text. It's good. I like it. It's consistent with the way the other sections in section 5 are written, you know.
Right.
And I think that's nice. I like consistency. It makes it easier to figure out what's going on when you're trying to read these to understand what's applicable. So I think around all of the fuel and gasoline station items you've come up with, it's good. It's very good. I do feel somewhat at the outset that maybe the EV question maybe is not something that we want to address inside the context of gasoline filling stations, having thought about it a little bit more. EV stations, EV charging equipment can be installed, well, we know, we've seen them, they're in front of grocery stores, they're in parks, they're all over the place. And we may, at some point, want to consider looking at a wider reaching set of EV zoning rules for when a site, not just a gas station, any site that comes before a site plan review, we may want to consider developing some site plan standards, building standards for how to include EV charging equipment in any site type, whatever the use is, commercial use is. I think there may also be a separate definition for, the terminology is tough, right? Because you think of the thing that plugs into the electric vehicle as a charging station, but that may not be the same thing as a charging station like in the large Tesla, everybody pulls in and charges all at once. At a gas station is the building, the site, and the business. The gas pump is the thing that pumps the energy into the vehicle. With electric vehicles, the terminology is a little vague because we still sometimes call the electrical, the station is the thing that you pump into the electrical vehicle. It's not the business and the associated site and site requirements. So I believe this amendment for gas stations is good. I'm in favor of it. I really like the whole thing. I think it's a great idea. I am concerned that if we start including EV stations in definitions in this section 5144 proposed, that might not be what we want to do, and that might confuse future EV installations. If we put text in this section that says EV stations shall be regulated the same as a gas station, what happens when Walmart puts one in front of their building, not in the gas station area?
Good point. Maybe we regulate it as an accessory use. In the general accessory uses, we regulate it over there so that it's applicable wherever it goes across any, because sometimes people even have it, like you said, in a neighborhood park, they might have one odd spot if it's municipal-owned park to put it in, because that's a good point. We'll look into it some more, and maybe it has to be pulled out of gasoline filling stations and put in accessory uses or accessory structures, and gasoline filling stations can still put one in from that section. So we're not prohibiting them from putting it in. That's a very good point.
Sure.
Very good point.
And I think that, when we start talking about how many electric pumps, sorry, I don't know the exact terminology, but plugs, we may want to consider whether or not the addition of a charging space should necessarily affect the number of required off-street parking spots in a business.
Yeah,
The question of what happens if you put the chargers in front of the convenience store, and now suddenly you've blocked access to the convenience store, or handicap access for those chargers, it may weigh into how we calculate the amount of required parking, depending on the number of charging stations that go in. In a situation where it's one or two, maybe it doesn't matter that much. But if we have someone that wants to put in 25 charging stations on a site that only has 50 parking spots, that could be maybe not a problem today, but in the future, and we're trying to be future looking. So that's my initial feedback on it. I had one other question. The proposal that you're doing, when we say we're making it a special land use, that would mean that anyone who wanted to build a gas station would first have to come through the Planning Commission for review, and then the Planning Commission would recommend to the Township Board.
Trustees, correct.
I think that's very reasonable. Yeah, thanks. Good work.
Very good comments, everyone. So I think we're all on board of continuing development of the ordinance, and some updates. I really like the idea of the accessory use, so it can be used all across
Any zoning district.
So, do you need us to do a motion on this, Director Power, or?
I don't think that's necessary. We'll keep developing it. Yep.
All right, perfect. All right, that brings us up to general discussion and updates for this evening. Is there anything for general discussion?
As far as updates, I just know there will be a May 11th meeting, and I quickly realized after our last work session on the Sumter Road zoning ordinance amendments that it was not going to work to quickly turn those around and give you a big homework assignment before this meeting agenda, because I knew we had some important things to discuss here. So hope to get those to you soon, and we'll put them on an agenda when it's appropriate. It may be as soon as that meeting on the 11th. But it may be a little bit later. There's a fair amount of development projects in queue, and anticipate the next 2 or 3 meetings will happen based on that. So,
okay. All right, thank you so much. Any other questions, comments for this evening?
I just want to remind us of, I believe it was prior to COVID. I believe, Dan, you were with us already, or Director Power. We said that we were going to look at that Kmart site. I think it's called the Lakeside Shopping or Lakeview Shopping site. That area continues to deteriorate, and I'm wondering how we can revitalize it to somehow bring it back. I don't know if it needs to be, something else needs to go there besides a strip mall, but Kmart is gone. And
yeah.
A couple other stores have closed
The
recently as
Dunham's
well.
is gone as well. There's a couple of the anchor stores.
Property, isn't it? So
it's
And one of the restrictions we have is that the owner is, there are leases in place that still have some time left before they expire. So those businesses will still there will still be some businesses present on the site before it can really get a full refresh, although there have been some circulating comments about potentially the whole thing being demolished. That's not happening anytime really soon. Maybe on a 2 to 5 year horizon, but certainly not tomorrow or next week or next month. So we have some time to think about it, but you're right, it is something we should think of as a planning priority. And in fact, when we were going over some of the 2020 master plan sub areas to focus on, apart from Sumter Road, that shopping center was one of the big ones. So I know we will want to look at it. In this case, the developer, I think has a good understanding that it's going to need a fresh look when, if and when these, commercial businesses start to go away. So I think they will be on board with being part of that discussion. It's just, it's going to take a little bit of time for those uses to kind of phase out and to give a full blank slate opportunity to that site. Definitely good comment for planning.
Anything else, anybody? No? All right, get a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjournment.
Support?
Support.
Commissioner Cullen, support by Commissioner Atchison. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes, we are adjourned.
Everybody.
All right, great meeting, everyone.
Very good.
Well, we went through a lot of stuff.